Welcome back to Weekends with Alex Witt. For Donald Trump, the power's in the polls. The Republican presidential frontrunner is expanding his leads nationally and in key early voting states, sending a message to GOP opponents that his campaign is here to stay. He spoke a short time ago in Nashville about it.
Favorability rating from negative to positive in one poll during the span of a month, a feat that Monmouth University's Patrick Murray, highly respected pollster, called astounding. He called it astounding. Nobody else wrote about it. That defies any rule in presidential politics that I've ever seen, said this highly respected man. Murray, the director of Polling Institute, said he flipped it from 20% to 52% in 1 month. And he said he's never seen that before. And you know what? That's because people have heard me.
And we just heard him as well as this guy, the highly respected man himself, Patrick Murray, the polling director of Monmouth University. What's that like, being called out by Trump in a good way?
Yeah, that's the first I've seen that. I've been called out in a bad way by other presidential candidates before, so I guess that's good. As you know, Alex, we try to run the most wonderful, classiest polling operation there is in the country, so I guess Donald saw that.
He gave you kudos right there. He pretty much read from a report where you were quoted. Is there any more context you want to add to what he said?
Yeah, I mean, this really is something that's incredible when somebody can, in the span of just over a month, go from a majority of Republican voters saying, I do not like this guy, to a majority saying, yeah, I think he could be president. The only way that ever happens is it's with an unknown candidate who just bursts out of nowhere and comes out and does something that really catches fire. It doesn't happen with somebody who's already a known commodity, as Trump has been all along. And what he did is he basically announced, I'm running for president, I want to build a big wall, among other things. And he really caught fire with Republican voters.
So in what you're saying there, are you getting a sense that more people see Donald Trump as being presidential?
No, and that's what's interesting about this. What they're saying is maybe we don't need somebody presidential. But he can still be president, according to the poll. Right. Maybe we need a bar bouncer as president, is what I'm hearing. I spent about a week out in Iowa, and I was talking to voters out there, and there was a real dichotomy between two different types of voters. The Trump voters, who just want somebody who's tough, who's mean, who can go in there and kick some butt, basically. And then there's the non-Trump voter who wants somebody outside of politics, maybe a Ben Carson or a Carly Fiorina, but wants somebody with more presidential bearing and would not actually back Trump. So there are a number of people out there, Republicans, who say, I will not vote for Donald Trump still, but they're dispersing their support among 16 candidates, and that's why Donald is leading the field.
Yeah, he's leading the field. I want to take a look also at the Quinnipiac poll that's out there, which he's leading again, more than doubling his closest opponent there. Do you think, though, Patrick, he's hit a ceiling, or do you think he still has room to grow within the Republican primary?
Well, if we look back 4 years ago when we had the anybody but Romney movement and we saw Herman Cain and Rick Perry and others rise and fall, they rose over a 6-week period. And Donald Trump just hit that 6-week period this past week. So we're going to look very closely at the polls right now that are going to coming out in the next 10 to 14 days to see if he's still going up, to see if he's hit a ceiling, or to see if he's going down. But this is the crux moment for Donald Trump to see if he's going to stick around.
Do you think it's different, though, with Donald Trump, and almost difficult to measure or compare, because this is a guy that we all knew really well before, not as a politician. I mean, he's got this whole persona that's been around for a couple decades. And
this is the difference here, is that he's not running against anybody but the front runner, because he is the front runner. What he's running against is Washington, D.C. One of the things that we know is that Republicans have a very dim view of their own Republican representatives in Congress. And that's basically saying, I don't like politicians. And Donald Trump is about as anti-politician as you can get.
Yeah. Hey, Patrick, listen in with me right now. He's just stepped in front of the cameras. It's a media availability, everyone, after his speech. Let's take him live.
By a lot, and nationally by a lot. I have a great relationship to the Republican Party, to the conservatives, to the evangelicals, to the Tea Party. You probably noticed right across the board.
So will you not not run?
Well, we're going to see what happens, but it's going to be a decision's going to be made very soon. Okay?
The Clinton campaign responded pretty strongly.
The who did?
The Clinton campaign responded pretty strongly.
Well, I thought what Hillary Clinton said about terrorists and Republicans being terrorists was a disgraceful statement, and she should take it back. Because actually what she said is a terrible statement, and she should take that statement back. She insulted many, many great people. Many, many great people. What she said about Republicans, she should take that statement back.
They called her comments about Huma Abedin disgraceful.
What do you feel is the most important factor of that, and how soon?
So where's your camera?
Camera is the ABC affiliate.
Right here.
Where is it?
With the local
I might as well help you, right? I mean, you're asking me over there, your camera's over here. As far as third party is concerned, the Republican Party has been treating me very, very fairly. All I ask is fairness, and I'm leading in every poll by a lot. We're leading in every state by a lot, and a lot of things are really happening. In terms of victory, that would certainly be the best path to victory, and we're going to make a decision very soon, and I think a lot of people are going to be very happy.
Were you too harsh on Huma Abedin in your comments?
No, not at all. No, I think it's a very dangerous thing when she is the receiver of so much of this very important information, and she's married to a guy who obviously is psychologically disturbed. I think it is a very fair statement that I made, and a lot of people have congratulated me. She's receiving this very, very important information and giving it to Hillary. Well, who else is she giving it to? Her husband has serious problems, and on top of that, he now works for a public relations firm. So how can she be married to this guy who's got these major problems? She's getting the most important information it could be in the world. I mean, who knows what he's going to do with it? Forget about her. What she did is a very, very dangerous thing for this country, and probably it's a criminal act.
So, Patrick, I want to bring you in as we continue monitoring what he's saying, and it looks like he's wrapping up this media avail. I mean, look at what he just did there. He was getting a question from somebody. I mean, he understands the media. He understands how to work it. He was getting a question from a reporter, and he specifically said to him, "Where's your camera?" Clearly, he didn't see the camera, and he wanted to play to the camera. What is it about his success? Is it about his bombastic style? Is there a campaign strategy you think that's feeding into it, or do you think it may be the faltering of his competitors' campaigns? What is it that puts him on top?
Well, I think one thing that we have seen from Donald Trump in the past few weeks is that he has hooked on to certain statements. I know he said recently, I don't say the same thing at every event, but he really does. So he's kind of learned the pattern of being a candidate, but he still is Donald Trump. He's been in front of the cameras much more than any other candidate has in a way that he's very comfortable with, and we just saw that. Here's a guy who has realized that he is hooked onto something that is outside of the realm of what we normally see in presidential politics, particularly on the Republican side, where he can do things like support a single-payer tax, a single-payer health care system, or give money to the Clintons, or all sorts of things that he's done in the past, and it just doesn't stick to him. And so that he understands that what they're looking for is his style, is his personality, and that's why he speaks directly to the camera, because that's what he knows the selling point is.
Okay, here we are less than 15 months away before the election. Let's fast forward to a year from now. We've got less than 3 months. Do you think there's anything in history, any precedents that will say that is when people want details? That's when they want specifics. They want plans ironed out. They want to know exactly what is going to happen should this person be put into the White House. I mean, at this point, he talks in generalities.
Right. And this is what happened with, say, Herman Cain when he came out with his 999 plan, and voters started taking a close look at that and said, well, wait a second, it doesn't all add up. Certainly, Rick Perry, Santorum, Gingrich, Michelle Bachmann, they all had that 4 years ago. The same thing, voters started taking a closer look to him. So we would assume that at some point voters are going to take a closer look at Donald Trump. But as I said before, he's already broken every rule in the book about what we expect to have, even the parameters that are unusual. You know, the ones that we say, well, these are hard to predict, but it's possible to happen. He's already broken those rules, too. So it's possible that we can go for months before voters will really hold him to account for his plans. But again, we do have months. So there's a long time. And I think at some point, at least enough voters will try to coalesce around another candidate. The key thing here, as I said, is that he's hit the 6-week point. He's led in every single poll in one of the 4 early states or nationally since July 26. That was the last poll that came out. It was an NBC, actually, Marist poll that came out in Iowa that showed somebody else other than Donald Trump in the lead. So we're going to start looking to see if other polls start showing somebody else in the lead. I think that'll be the key. I don't know. There's a lot of ways to describe his candidacy, but I think interesting sure is one of them. Absolutely. Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. As were you. Thank you so much, Patrick Murray. Come see us again. My pleasure. Thanks.